you for tuning in. We really appreciate you listeners being here. My name is Brad Allen, and I am the creator of Crusader's Tale, the film series, and this is the podcast companion series that pairs with the show called The Tale Continued, and this is the podcast companion episode for episode 5 of season 2 of Crusader's Tale. With me here today is actor Luis Castillo. Very fun to work with on set, and delighted to have you here chatting on the podcast today. So thanks for being here, and if you'd like to say a couple words about yourself, please, the floor is yours.
Hello, boss. Good to be here. I don't mean to start making waves early, but the moon is a hologram. I mean to be making waves, but it's kind of what I do everywhere I go.
I mean, the moon does make waves. So
yeah, it's up there plotting our demise with the low tide and high tide. Can you believe that scientific nonsense? I can't. Second. No, I'm kidding. So a little bit about me, boss. Well, let's see.
Yeah.
Well, I know we don't got a lot of time, so I'll start off with the big news first. I just got engaged. Proposed last night.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I'm really excited for you about this, actually.
It was a long process. 4 month, no, wait. Actually, yeah, 5 to 6 month process. Secrets and hiding and going behind your back. I know this sounds horrible already. It's a horrible start off to a potential marriage filled with lies and whisper behind the back. But
Deceit,
yeah, the deceitful nature of trying to propose. It's kind of redundant when you think about it. But I asked her last night. She said yes, and I don't know what's wrong with her because she said yes to me. No.
Well, you're a great guy. So.
Yeah, I try to be. No, she's wonderful. Every day I look at her, I question why she chose me. She's choosing me, and I'm choosing her. So we're gonna see where that goes. We're gonna see where that goes from here. So.
Well, congratulations. I'm very excited for you. She's awesome. You're awesome as well. It works out great. And by the time that this episode is released, of course, it'll be a month after it's happened. But, I mean, at that point, we'll be sure to do like a shout out for you, something of that nature.
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean,
yeah.
When it happened, it's like, oh, God, we got to tell everyone. But we were kind of trying to figure out how to do that. Because me personally, I don't like making big announcements like that, like on a social media. I'm very private when it comes to stuff like that. Which is, when you think about it kind of backwards as an actor, your life is kind of out public. You want people to know what you're doing, but
sure,
more of a private person, if you will. I think I got that from my dad more than anything.
Sure, yeah.
He's been a very private person and very level-headed person too.
Sure.
Him and my mom have been together for the past 35 years. So when I think of the steps to making a successful marriage, I always look back on them, more or less. Because, like married couples, they fight, they argue. I guess, like, he was telling, I remember one time, the first time I saw it happen, like, when you're a kid, you don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, you guys gonna separate? And they're like, no. Yeah. Like, right now, we're angry at each other. But that doesn't mean it's the end of the world. You work through the process, and eventually you two will see eye to eye. All right, Dad, I understand. All right, cool. So, when it comes to hardships in any of the relationships I've had, I've always had that mindset.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, I wasn't alone when I was younger. I had a brother and sister, the oldest of the three. My sister's the youngest, and
sure,
is obviously the middle.
Yeah.
They also are married, and they were surprised because it was like they always thought I was going to be the one.
Being older.
Being older, and
yeah.
I think I've had my last 2 relationships were much more long term. Than what they've had, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I think my sister actually dated her husband for 5-6 years before he popped the question.
Okay.
So anyways, tight-knit family, love each other. They're very supportive. I remember when I told them I wanted to be an actor, I was afraid that they would look at me and go, "Why? But actor? Why?" No, you need to stick to what you're doing now. I think I was still working for an exterior remodeling company, windows, doors, siding, that type of
Yeah,
thing.
sure. Yeah.
But no, they were surprisingly supportive. I think my dad had like a smirk on his face when I told him, he was like, "An actor, really? All right, son. All right, well, I'll be here for you." My brother and sister were the
Yeah.
same mind, and even my work, man, like all these guys with like 14, 15 years of construction experience, and they're in. I wouldn't say they're in a rut, but they're just at this job like I am. And when I told them, they weren't. They were extremely supportive too, and work
Good.
has
Good.
always given me time off for it. I'll tell
Yeah.
them, and they're like, "Yeah, no problem. Here you go, enjoy." So
Yeah.
they want me to succeed. My
Yeah.
family wants me to succeed. So we'll go from there and see how it goes.
I mean, I'm glad to see that, and congratulations to your parents on one healthy marriage, and yeah, I mean, for you getting this acting career started, I mean, I can relate because my own family's been very supportive of me being a, let's call it, a part-time director and actor. It's definitely a job, and I work plenty of other hours at a few various jobs outside of that too. So I get where you're coming from. It's nice to have that support, and I know how much that means too. And gosh, yeah, because there's
Yeah, boss.
a
I
lot.
mean, like, there was like when I went to the premiere of the last season,
Yeah,
I was like, man, there are a lot of people in this room who aren't on screen right now. Who
yeah,
don't look like the people who are in. Like, oh, there's a lot of people here. There's a lot of traction. Let's see what's going on.
yeah.
So they were all lovely people when I met them. I believe I met your parents there, if I'm not mistaken.
You did.
Yeah, they were very nice. They were very lovely. And
Thank
I
you.
was tromping around in a walking boot because at the time I was still under recovery from my broken ankle.
I remember that. Yeah, I'm glad it healed because I was worried about how that would shake out just for your own health's
Oh,
sake.
yeah. When that work injury happened, the first thing that went through my mind was not, how am I going to walk again? It was, oh man, I think my acting career is over.
Right,
But,
right.
but thankfully, the doctors, I'm telling them, oh, this is what I do. I do acting, I do sword fighting, I do stage work. Will I be able to do it again? And they're like, yeah,
Yeah.
you'll be fine. We're going to surgically repair you with pins and needles. You're fine.
Good. Good.
18 metal pins, one plate, and 2 titanium screws later, and we're good to go.
Damn. I mean, the thing is, you would never have guessed that ever happened because when we were filming the battle scene in the season finale, I mean, like, man, like you held up amazingly well. Like there was you didn't skip a beat. I mean, if anyone was falling apart at that point, it was probably me with my back. My back was hurting.
I think we were all feeling something that day because it was so friggin' humid.
Yeah. Oh
And
my
being
god.
in, like, even in an inlet surrounded by rocky outcroppings and shade did not help whatsoever.
No.
It was the layers of clothing.
Yeah.
I think even the walk up there, I was done. It was like carrying
Oh
all
yeah.
that equipment and whatnot. This was over.
With
It was over.
dude, hell yeah. I mean, with the chainmail armor, I was suffering for sure. Because it was an exhausting hike, and then of course having to film a battle scene on top of that is crazy. Like that's a huge undertaking, no matter how long or short the scene is. And I'll say this much that the battle scene, I mean, in season one there were 3 battles, which was quite an undertaking of its own. But each battle was somewhere between 10 to 30 seconds tops. Like they were short. Um, it was fun. But now in season two, we have this battle scene, which, all things considered, amongst all the characters battling, it's like a 2.5 minute scene of sword fighting. Granted, there's 3 different sword fights happening at the same time, and there's a little bit of dialogue mixed in, but I mean that's a long fight, like for choreography, and we had lots of moves that we practiced or even improvised on, and it is a lengthy scene. Like, there's a lot that happens.
Yeah, no, I mean it is pretty lengthy, and what I've seen so far, Zach Menzies.
Yes.
Never get his name.
That's
right.
our director.
I love that guy so much.
Yeah.
I can't get his name right though.
It's a Scottish name, I believe.
Scottish.
Yeah. Menzies.
What he originally showed me, when they put it in the group chat, that first cut, I was like, all right, we're gonna be okay. Because as you were saying, like all the choreography we did for the fight, we had to leave some of it on the cutting room floor because the environment we saw, like for me, you probably wouldn't see it, but my eyes looking at it from a choreographer standpoint, excuse me.
From a stuntman.
The overhead cuts you kind of had to get rid of because of the tree that was just dead center right in front of us.
Yeah.
Because every time we went for it, it kept hitting the branches, and sometimes my sword would get caught. It's like, oh, well, now we got to nix this.
Yeah.
All right, well, we'll go from scratch and here from there and whatnot. So
yeah,
I'm glad what we had worked, though I do wish that we could have incorporated just a little bit more of what we had come up with.
Because there was a lot. I mean, there was 25 moves.
And it was also built off what Zach originally wrote.
True. Yep.
You know? And of course, in this world, like, you may be the first writer, but once it's out of your hands, other people will try to add or take away. And
true.
When I saw the first season's fights, I was like, I like what's going on, but maybe being experienced,
I would say you are
knowledgeable.
You are
in the aspect of sword fighting. From the classes I've taken, I'm like, well, maybe I can add a little something to this, and we'll give it a little bit more of a zip. And that's not taken away from David, because David's amazing.
Yeah,
and I loved what he did with him, Sarah, and
Peter.
Yeah, Peter.
Is the actor's
name. I kept doing the accent from Dodgeball.
Right. No, Peter's great.
Yeah, he's got a comedy show coming up.
I did see that. I know this is a side note, but yeah, he's got his first comedy show coming up in Chicago, which congrats to Peter. This will be old news by the time the podcast's out, but love that for him. Well done, Peter. You're the man. Amazing. I would go that night, but I have a friend's wedding that I'll be going to. So unfortunately I can't make it, but I do wish him the best. And when he hears this after the fact, Peter, you're great. You're the man.
Are you sure, man? I mean, a wedding's a wedding. Like, I mean, it's this. What are they? They get up there and they go, "I do," bam, done. You've been to one wedding, you've been to them all. So.
I mean, this
is a comedy show.
It could be the best thing ever. It could be so funny.
Yeah, this was his break, and you're like, I gotta go to a wedding.
A terrible friend. I mean, I have a cute date, so.
Oh, rock and roll.
I mean, I can't pass that up. Have to see it through. Which, of course, maybe she'll hear that too. And yes, you're adorable. But all right, I digress. We were saying that so the choreography. I mean, of course, you're an experienced swordsman because you've done the classes. Being a movie buff as well, I deeply appreciated that we had that insight. It really did add a lot to it because there was a level of realism that just it was amazing. Like, it felt real between you and I as we were doing the moves. The European traditional style of sword fighting, and the footwork that you had described.
Well, I mean, yes, with all that, but when I was thinking of, like, even before the classes, like, I think when I was in high school, they were like a short film with sword fighting, and at that age, like, when you have no experience, you're like, oh, it's just this and that. You put your sword here and whatnot. And then when I took the classes, some of that was like, okay, well, your sword goes here, your sword goes there. But it's like, how do you get there? And as when I first started, someone who didn't know, it's like, oh, you just move your hands. But it's more than that, because it's your core, it's your footwork, it is your hand position. That's all the things you learn as you go on. Like, I first started off, it's SAFD certified classes, which is Society of American Fight Directors, I believe that's what the
Sure.
acronym is. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I learned under a gentleman named Christopher Elst.
Okay.
My first class with him was unarmed, learning how to like stage punches and
Yeah,
fights and
for
whatnot.
sure. Yeah.
And it was tough for me because I think I was one of the only people in the room who actually knew how to throw a proper punch because I was in the service and I knew how to
Yeah.
fight hand to hand. So
Yeah.
it's like when you come from a martial background, as they call it, it's hard to. It's not hard, but it's a little bit difficult to make that transition from real to staged.
Correct. I don't know from experience, but I hear you.
And it was even worse when I had a weapon in my hand. Because when you're in the service, every time they put a weapon in your hand, they drill that into you. It's like this is used to intent to defend yourself, to kill.
Right.
So whenever they put the sword in my hand, and especially when I had the two-handed sword, I caught myself in this weird, I don't want to say killer instinct, but this weird mode.
Yeah.
And I had to keep like snapping myself out of it.
Yeah.
Because it's like, this is staged. You're not really trying to hurt this person.
Correct.
So
yeah,
it was kind of a culture shock. But yeah, I
sure.
went from unarmed to rapier, single sword,
yeah,
to sword and shield, which is what I helped. I was like, oh, I know sword and shield. You're fighting with a sword and shield. Let me help you.
Yeah.
And then as we got closer to filming date, then I took a two-handed sword class. And that's what I ended up using because the sword I had a hand and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And
yep.
And this is before the class when you came to me to start, like coming up with choreography ideas. I'm like, God, what do I do? What do I do? All I know is hand and a half, and then the two-handed sword. I'm like, oh, perfect timing.
Yeah.
So we started incorporating a lot of that into what we were doing, and and again, it goes back to when I saw the footage from the first series. Like, okay, well, they've got stuff here, but the fights are a little bit shorter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, maybe I can come in again and all the skills that I've acquired to help them create a more long fight scene.
Yeah.
Because, oh, excuse me.
Oh, you're good.
What they teach you in the class is, even if it's Hamlet or King Lear or Henry VIII, or even She Kills Monsters, or even if you're setting up stuff you're copying stuff from film, like Pirates of the Caribbean and The Princess Bride, you still have to tell the story even if you know, like the story still has to be there even if you know who's the good guy and the bad guy.
Yeah.
It's boring if you have two people who are just swinging a sword.
Yeah.
And they're not doing anything. There's no intent. There's no emotion. There's no grunting.
Yeah.
It's all about showing the emotion and telling of the story. Like, I think that was one of the things I said to you when we first started. It's like, what is William's character? Is he brave? Is he cowardly? Is he this? Okay, so he's brave. Yes, I am giant over you, and I am 1.5 times your size.
Easily.
But even in that aspect, William, being the brave character he is, would not shy away from the fight no matter what.
Right. I mean, he's like a reluctant hero. I know we already talked about this over choreography, but just for the listeners' benefit at least, like the Jon Snow vibe, like that's kind of the reluctant, brave, but scared, but overcoming the fear, for sure.
Yeah, and and it would be another aspect that you incorporate into the fight is you work with the size.
Yep.
It's enough to see it on screen, but it's not believable if I go for a sword strike and you just block it and just stand there. You have to sell the power behind the swing, which I think is what we translated pretty well.
Yeah, like the staggering back and like the reeling with the shield, like holy shit, that was a big swing.
So like when if I could use a wrestling term, heel bad guy has the face on the ground and you see the struggle between the two characters, you're worried about William. Like, oh crap, he may actually die here.
Yeah.
And then you build up you're telling the story, you build up to that comeback, if you will.
Yes. I mean, it's a beautiful analogy because it's literally like a wrestling scene through and through. I mean, because by the time viewers are listening to this episode, they've seen the battle, so there's no spoilers or anything like that. Um, I mean, I love that analogy because when Torres literally stabs William, and like he looks like he could be it, like he's wounded but not dead, and then the next attempted stab is going right for the throat. Like that's it. Like William's done. Um, it's the only thing that actually saves his life is that he has friends. His backup is what ends up being his saving grace. He could not win that fight by himself. It just wouldn't happen. Which is fun. I mean, because it helps tell the story of a story of friendship and camaraderie and excitement. So that was cool. You know, I don't know if you have any, I guess thoughts on like trying to do a 2v1 on like what that vibe is, but
Oh yeah, 2v1. I mean,
yeah.
I've done it before, but I've done it cold, where it's like, oh, you three are a group, go figure something out. So it's a little bit of awkwardness, but what we ended up doing was we redid the scene between William, Admiral Norrington, Commodore Norrington, if you will, and Jack at the end of Pirates of the Caribbean 2.
Yeah,
And
kind of.
we had they're fighting over an object. So instead of three people just fighting each other, it's three people now fighting over the chest.
Sure.
So that's what helped to recreate the thing. It's like the focus is on the chest. And now how do you get there?
Sure.
So we came up with overhand strike stabs, some comedy, because at one point I like get broken away from the fight and the two others are fighting each other. And I'm like, oh, time to go steal the chest. And then we had the one on defense kick the person that was attacking them, and he falls back and crashes into me.
Yeah.
So we incorporated a little bit of comedy there and some disarms and whatnot. So,
okay.
Yeah, a 2v1 fight is a little bit of a challenge, but when you have a little bit more experience and you work with people who know what they're doing, it's a lot simpler.
Sure, yeah.
And also some of the skills that I learned specifically in the class, like we learned how to use cards, we learned how to use music.
Okay.
There are some guys who know, and I think we did this, I tried to translate this to you in our fight, who use sound effects for that last like little bit where I was like, it's not shing stab, it's ching ching.
Yeah.
And then there are people who know how to fight like that, where I've gone to, or a director has come to me and they're like, I want it to go ting 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 shing shang.
And then
I'm
it
like,
just translates.
How do we get there?
Right.
It's like, all right, we'll figure it out.
Like the speed and the intensity is what they're looking for rather than a certain style of swing. They just want to feel the power.
Yeah, but also if you're using, it's still a safety thing. Like you still have to be mindful. You can't just go there swinging a wild.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, and we were very cognizant of that. I would say for sure. Where we paused a lot as we were filming, almost after each move or piece of choreography. I mean, there were a number of points where we paused because either it didn't look right or the next move was about to be super unsafe. So it's like, whoa, pause. Like,
yeah, I mean, safety is a huge thing because even though these swords are dulled or whatnot, they're still huge weighted chunks of metal that you are swinging around.
True.
I have heard stories of
yeah.
classes where someone had the top of their scalp chopped off because someone wasn't paying attention. I mean, I think even thankfully it was such a small nick, but Sarah even got nicked in the forehead, I believe.
She did. Actually, that's true. While we were filming their scene, it was just a little bit too close of a call, even with a dull blade, because there's still small grooves.
Yes.
No matter how dull you get it. And it was one of those things where it was like a scratch rather than like a deep cut.
Yeah, thankfully so.
Right. I felt horribly bad.
I felt bad. I was standing there when it happened. I was like, should have been paying more attention.
I mean, that was an instance where, like, of course, if something happened, I'd get her to the hospital and I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna help you out here. But like, I'm very, very glad that she was okay. And she, handled that with a smile and a laugh, like a trooper, like just the most. That's what's great about Sarah, working with on the films and stuff, like just so unbothered. Like she was so chill, and that helped everyone else kind of chill out, I think, because it was like, okay, she's good,
Yeah.
she's fine.
And in addition, the entire cast was great. Like I worked with David
Yes.
on so many things. Every time I see that guy, it's hugs all around. I love working
Yep.
with Zach. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time working with Richard, Kyle,
And Devin, who played
Devin.
Tanner.
Yep. No, I haven't worked with Devin before. That's right. The first time I saw him was at the church shoot.
Yep.
Yeah, it was a good time. And they're all
Yeah.
great. And know that Zach and David are continuing with a bunch of choreography, and I wish them all luck because it always looks amazing.
Yeah,
Those guys rock.
they do a great job, without fail. Every single project, they're wonderful. They're very talented, and I respect both of them very, very much.
Yeah, can't wait to share another set with them.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best part about acting, making movies, all that stuff. I don't know if the listeners can hear the laptop fan going crazy. If you hear a noise, that's what that is, but I digress. But, the people is what really makes the movie so much fun because, whether it's a comedy or this historical fiction piece that we're doing, like it's really my chance to hang out with my friends is kind of how I see it. I work my butt off all week and then I go to a film set and it's just all good vibes. We have a great time. Everyone really seems to get along, and I love that. Because it for me it makes my life complete. Where there's always something to look forward to. Friends of mine who do the acting, they've said the same thing. Where it's
right.
Like Kyle, for example, said many times like how much he appreciates coming to help out on sets with me. Where it feels like it gives him purpose, and just takes you out of the monotonous routine.
Yeah, I mean, for me, to build up what Kyle said, I remember saying that I think the times that I'm most happy is when I'm in front of a camera.
Same.
Because it is something that I love doing. It's something I've been wanting to do for the longest time. I'm glad I finally went for it.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I've had the successes and the continued projects that I've had. But yeah, it's the time I'm most happy.
I appreciate that. I mean, I relate. I mean, and it's
especially something like this, like all the skills that like we
Yeah.
talked about earlier, all the skills I've acquired is like now I can put it into use. All the clothing that I've bought, not specifically for this because I'm a huge Rennie.
Yeah.
So I've gone to several and I'm like, I'm tired of dressing in a t-shirt and jeans. I want to be like these guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
So spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on Renaissance fair period clothing, it's like I'm going to use this stuff. I can finally use it. I'm happy to be using it.
Yeah, and it's not hard to spend a ton of money.
Oh yeah,
like the stuff can be expensive. It's crazy. That's why we had to do a whole fundraiser. So costumes are a lot.
Especially good weapons.
Yeah, I mean that was a process of trying to find stuff that was going to be quality, but not bank breaking.
Yeah,
that was a challenge.
Yeah, how many swords did you go through? 2, 3, 7?
Well, for my character alone, God, I broke 2 swords. One of them broke during a previous scene where we weren't even doing choreography. I just twisted the handle too hard and then it just snapped. And then there was another one that shipped pre-broken, just was faulty. And then that third one that we filmed with for the battle scene held up during the course of filming. And now it's loose and kind of it's falling apart. So it's like there's 3 swords that have gone to crap, and yeah, it'll be 7 before we know it.
Yeah, maybe we'll try to get a few more bucks and we'll buy some full tank swords so we don't have to worry about that. So.
Well, and I think it makes sense that William might have a different weapon, because in season 3 of Crusader's Tale, he's going to be in a whole different realm. I mean, seasons 1 and 2 is really one large overarching plot for William regaining his honor and finding his way home. Is really what that's a big piece of it, trying to become an honorable knight again. Now, season 3, it's going to involve a lot of scenes with his family, a lot of, it'll be kind of like a thesis about what it means to become a leader and like what that looks like if you've never expected to be a leader. So he'll go through that process. There's going to be romance and like love stories too, which is exciting.
Nice, rock and roll.
Yeah, my uncle suggested that when I asked him for ideas about how to improve the show, and he said, "Well, everyone loves a good love story." So I was like, "Yeah, it's sure." So we'll have a couple things coming for that. Um, there's a lot of thought going into that for sure. Um, yeah, I mean the story direction is going to change significantly enough. Like it's still about this Crusader knight and his world traveling journey and the people that he meets and the the amazing interactions that happen. Um, but it's kind of like it's like you take the Crusader out of the Crusade because the Crusade is over at this point. But then maybe this is a spoiler, but later in the show there will be other crusades that happen that he is in some way, shape, or form involved in, whether that's crusades in Southern Europe or the Holy Land or Eastern Europe. I mean, yeah. I mean, there's so many historical events that we can plug William into, and all these other side characters, these amazing people that we have, they have their own stories to tell.
Yeah,
which will be told, and I know there's 100% an intention that we haven't seen the last of Torres, for example. I know we're still kind of figuring out exactly what that might look like.
well, yeah. I mean, we left it not necessarily on a cliffhanger, but like, you know, the sword gets taken away and he just runs off. Like,
yeah, like
he
even
ain't
off
fighting nobody with two swords.
right, like off screen, he just takes off because, I mean, Torres, he realizes that's a losing battle. Not only are they outnumbered, the Emperor of Germany that he was a mercenary for has now been punched to the ground and incapacitated. His fellow mercenary has been sliced up. So like they're totally on the back foot here. And yeah, so it makes sense. Like someone who's there fighting for money, not a cause. Yeah, it'd be insanity to stick around.
Plus all that research we did, dang well better come now. Just kidding.
Right. Yeah, I mean, well, because Torres, I really appreciate the life he brought into the character, and it's nice to have. This was something we talked about as we were getting you on board the cast. The diversity is something that I do really, really care about because I know there's different schools of thought on that, but something that I think is important is that I want viewers to be able to see themselves in the various characters. And for some people, it helps them see themselves if you quite literally have a diverse cast, because then even just on the visual level, that helps people imagine themselves as a hero, for example. But even past that, like characters from different parts of the world, it tells about different cultures, how they merge, how they clash, and stuff like that. I just think it's really interesting that we have that, and we have characters that are from East Asia, like Liana, and then Middle Eastern in the way of Dazar and Fadi. Even if that's not the actor's ethnicity, it's like the character, right? So that's we've got traditional European, English, German characters, that as well, and then Torres being Spanish is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, besides the obvious Spanish representation, you've also got the dark, brooding, big, and handsome representation narrowed down with Torres there.
Tall, dark, and handsome. I mean, it's cool. I mean, the long hair fit really well.
Yeah,
like, it's great.
I mean, I loved when you messaged me like, "Oh, we're gonna shoot," and I'm like, "Dude, I shaved off my goatee for a commercial I did." Yeah, I'll explain that in a second. But
Yeah.
I shaved off my beard. What do we do? I'm like, well, let's you got like a scarf or something? Just wrap his lower part. Thankfully, it worked because the microphone just kept getting muffled.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, even the looks in the trailer, it's nice. I mean, I've showed it to some of the people I was in the puppet show with, and they're like, "This looks amazing."
Thank you.
Yeah.
because that was for what we dubbed Mosquito Mountain. Because
Yes.
we've been eaten alive by mosquitoes. Spring Green's Tower Hill.
That was the only time I was happy to be wrapped up in all that stuff, because you guys had like sleeves and legs and necks exposed, and I was covered from head to toe except for like
Yep.
the upper part of my face, because I had the
Yeah.
scarf, I had gloves on, the boots, 2 layers of shirts.
You were good. I mean,
And you all is like, you all are flipping around like, oh god, the mosquito. Get through this impenetrable armor.
I know. That was funny. I mean, it was like, because that scene, it wasn't the battle, but it was the scene where William and Tanner are sneaking into the castle in disguise, and you know, it's kind of it's a little goofy because, like, you know, of course they're guys of, oh, we're farmers, like we bring coins, and you know, your characters, Gunther and Torres, you know, I think they kind of know that, like, who are these two strange people? Like, they almost just want to get them out of their face. Is really kind of how they treat that. Like just move along. Like they don't even want to deal with it, kind of. Which in some ways could be negligence, because then they let literal spies get into the castle. But at the other end of things, it's kind of like, well, they're just paid to be there.
Yeah.
How much do they really
Actually, I was hired to defend emperor and kill people, not guard a door.
Yeah. He's like, this is beneath me. Like, peasants, like, just go. Yeah. And like Peter's character Gunther being like, they stink.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I mean, because that's a real historical thing, is that nobles or soldiers, I mean, they would regard peasants in a lot of cases in just a negative light. Out in the fields all day, working with pigs, stinky, like, move along, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And knights had their vassals and their towers.
Yes.
Just they had the good life, more or less.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and hell, we had a good amount of thought that went into that for Torres as a character. I mean, none of it made it into the final cut of the scenes or the, you know, what dialogue there is, but like, you know, he comes from a noble family, and you know, was well off growing up, was trained as an expert swordsman, and you know, he's a counterpart to William in the sense that William comes from a castle with money, very well to do, you know, and so does Torres. It's just he happened to be a mercenary because he just wanted something exciting to do.
Well, yeah, and also,
Yeah.
I mean, at the time where this all takes place, Spain existed, but it didn't exist. It was taken over by
Yeah.
Who was that? I can't remember. I think it was the Muslims. Was it the Muslims?
It was I think it was the Almohad dynasty,
Yes.
which is like an offshoot of the Abbasid and Ayyubid dynasties, Greater Arabia and North Africa Empire. Yeah, it's like an offshoot of that.
Yeah, not specifically that religious group, but the encompassing whole of the groups.
Yeah, the Islamic Caliphate
There we go. Yeah,
was always expanding. I mean, it was that was the whole thing about the historical, I guess, ties behind the Crusades. Even is that, like, there were expanding empires from all ends of the world, and you know, of course, the Islamic Caliphate is expanding as European Christian monarchies are expanding and branching out, and they're just two cultures that just clash. And you know, that's a very simplified way of describing it, which definitely is negligent about some of the bad stuff. But I mean, you know, and that's part of it too, is a consideration with the script. Like, with the show, you know, we're dealing with a time of history during the Crusades, which was bloody and just heinous, religious, cultural, ethnic warfare. I mean, it's bad stuff. You know, like, sure, there's a stated goal of, like, we're trying to recapture the city of Jerusalem to provide a safe place for Christian pilgrims.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that sounds honorable on paper, but there's a lot of bad stuff that happened too, like just slaughtering villages, like at the Siege of Acre, just slaughtering the whole populace, basically. I mean, these are the things that happen, and it's
the atrocities that are carried out in the name of religion.
Right, and that's kind of like the story we're trying to tell is um, we're trying to recognize that this was a very bad point in history, but there is a story to tell here about heroes along the way who kind of rise above the awful nature of the times they're living in and show that there's a better world that could exist.
I mean, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think you established that in the first episode. I mean, when Body and William see each other drinking from that stream,
Mhm.
they pause for a second, like, "Oh, it's the enemy," and then they start attacking each other, and then realize this is pointless. We both ran away.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can figure out a way to get back home.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I love like just how that all played out. I mean, like it was so much fun. Yeah.
yeah, it reminded me of that episode of The Twilight Zone. I think it was called War, where a male and a female soldier from opposing factions come into
Yeah.
a town and they see each other.
Mhm.
And like the war is over, there's nobody left to fight.
Yeah.
But for that split second, they work on instinct instead
Yeah.
of shooting at each other.
Yeah.
And then one of them's like, "This is pointless,"
Yeah.
and then the other one starts following them around town to see what they're doing. And
Yeah.
by the end, they become friends, I believe.
I mean, something that was an inspiration for me was in World War One. There were stories documented about on like Christmas Day of 1916 or 1917,
Mm-hmm.
German and British soldiers took a pause in the fighting unofficially to exchange Christmas gifts in
Yeah.
no man's land. And it's like, this is human nature at work, is that even in the bloodiest times, people are people. And it's very fascinating to show that from the different cultural aspects. Again, like why I love the diversity so much too is that we're seeing cultures clash, and yet characters do come together. I mean, even the fact, even like with William and Torres, like they have this big battle and vicious fighting, like that ends up with getting stabbed and wounded even, and yet at the end of the fight there is that pause where William's got two swords and he could go on the offensive, but he stops because at that point the battle's over. He doesn't want to kill Torres, and where Torres kind of takes off, it's like, well, it's another instance of that where they realize, okay, there's an exit ramp,
Yeah, I mean, it's like you were saying, it's like realizing what you're doing, like the atrocities of war. I mean, the World War One Christmas thing. Could you like even today that would never happen?
Yeah.
The moment they step out, someone steps out, they would. I mean, even in World War Two, like for some reason, major holidays were no fighting days.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if you ever seen Band of Brothers when they were
I have.
fighting in the Ardennes forest.
Yeah.
They're not fighting on Christmas.
Right.
From the Americans' perspective, you can hear the Germans singing,
Right. Yeah.
Christmas hymns and whatnot. They're still on watch, but
Yeah.
nobody's going to do anything.
Right.
And it's when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, like what they're doing there, they're there to vanquish the opposing force, but it's like, oh, we're still human enough to stop the fighting, and we'll let you guys have this day.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what's so intriguing to me. I mean, like that's like another aspect building off of that. Like with season 2, William in season 1 had spoken a lot about his family and how much he loved them and missed them, but they're just names. They're just kind of in the atmosphere. It's hard to really picture it because it's just this guy talking about it.
Yeah.
But then, like in season 2, we get all these flashback scenes, and you meet his family, and you see how much his sister cares about him and how much his brother loves him, and his mother just cherishes him as a young boy, and even his father giving him heartfelt advice. There's the older brother that's sort of meant to be an unlikable character,
right?
But it just adds depth. Like you see these relationships that he had, and then in other scenes where he's telling Fadi or Tanner, I just want to go home, I want to regain my honor. It makes sense why he's, for 2 seasons straight, just been, basically desperate to get home. Like, it makes sense. Like you feel the humanity. We want to show that.
Of course.
Yeah.
But with that being said, since you said that to me, I think Torres is going to make a stop in merry old England and
He could.
see if we can find your brother.
He could. I mean, because Wade is even their sister Anna says something about that in episode 3 of season 2. Like, someday you'll make a better husband than Wade. And William's like, that is not a compliment. That's like a backhanded statement. Because Wade's the worst. Like, he's, of course, this didn't make it into the final scene either. But I mean, Wade is your classic example of do whatever he wants, no consequences. He's the heir to the castle, pompous, totally unfaithful to his wife, really doesn't care, barely recognizes his own children as children, and more so sees them as property and heirs. Him even saying, like, when William asks, would you send your own son to fight? Wade doesn't say, no, like, that's my boy, I want him to be safe. He says, no, he's the heir to the castle. Like, he's got a job to do. And it's like, your son is 2 years old.
So the classic definition of aristocracy.
Exactly.
It's all about it.
Exactly. Medieval feudalism.
Yeah, let those peasants go.
Right, or even his younger brother, like Wade so dismissively saying, you're just the second son. If you go die, you're expendable. Doesn't matter. It's not going to hurt father's castle. And that's where William is like there's a moment in that scene where he kind of like chews his lip and he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's like that.
I had to portray something like that in the last show I was in. It was a puppet show about the Milwaukee Turners and the history of Milwaukee itself, involving them.
Sure.
And I was playing Solomon Juneau, who was, I think, the first mayor of Milwaukee, started the first post office and whatnot.
Yeah.
But there's a scene where the Civil War has started. And all the guys on the puppets on stage are like, I want to go fight this, that, or whatever. And one of them's like, let's not be too hasty. And then my character comes in, Solomon Juneau, and he's like, I don't think I want to do the accent right now, but he goes,
you're good.
And he goes, at the top of his lungs, he's all cheery, like, I've got it. And they're like, got what? And it's like registration papers to go fight for the Northern Army. And then they all rush him.
Okay.
Because they all want to go fight.
Yeah.
Not realizing that what that cost is to go fight for a country.
Yeah.
That it hits home in the next scene. Because the narrator talks about how he was captured. They stole his gold watch that he won. Who was Kevlin's character? God, it's escaping me right now, and I feel horrible. But that character in real life was captured. His gold watch that he won for a competition was stolen. He weighed 100 pounds by the time he was released, and that his training as a turner was what helped him survive the malnutrition and whatnot.
Yeah.
And my character is giving him a Congressional Medal of Honor.
Sure.
And he ends up just tossing it because he's like, the sacrifices I've had to make it back here don't equate what you're giving me. What's more important to me is that gold watch.
Right.
I've lost so much to get here.
Yeah.
And all the horrors that I've seen. So it's like,
yeah.
And like I got to ad-lib lines where, like, as they're chasing me out, I'm like, let's go fight for our country. And by by us, I mean you and not me.
Right.
So it's a tale as old as time, you know?
Yeah. There was one other thing on my mind. I know we're not like right up on the hour mark yet. There was one other thing I wanted to at least kind of segue into for the podcast here. With the show in general, and I guess particularly season 2, with the the costuming and everything. Let me rephrase, I guess. So the on-set vibes, I guess, is what I'm kind of getting at. The process of getting the costumes on and interacting with the other actors and all having a good time. I guess that's kind of what I was hoping to also segue into, is like, what was that like from your perspective about?
Well, for me, and it's a very different process than what I'd run into.
Yeah.
Because I view this as work. I'm here to work.
Right.
And when I'm working, I'm focused.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times it comes off as standoffish, rude, arrogant, sometimes mean.
I wouldn't say so.
Well,
but...
this is what I've gotten from
Right.
like other people. Like
Okay.
I was on a set where it's my first day there, and there's a bunch of other people I've worked with,
Sure.
and they're all cracking jokes, and I'm over there just studying my script,
Yeah.
trying to get into character.
Sure. Yeah.
And they
Nothing
turn
wrong
to
with
me
that.
and they're like, "Man, I missed when you were funny." It's like, motherfucker, I'm working.
Right.
I'm working right now.
Right.
When we're done here, we'll paint the town red, but I'm working
Sure.
right now.
Sure.
I'm sorry. And then I started to look at it. I'm like, maybe I should find a balance. So the next time I went back, it was just me and the camera crew and another person on set. They weren't shooting, but I was cracking jokes, and I was still trying to be somewhat like that deadpan delivery that I have sometimes.
Yeah.
It was there.
Yeah.
Trying to work it in, but again, I prefer to be focused. I'm trying to understand what I'm doing. I want to, especially when we're working with weapons.
Yeah.
That is a time to be 100% focused on what you're doing.
Have to be.
Because if you're joking and chit-chatting and laughing and whatnot, it's like, okay, let's go. You're not going to be serious about it because you have to show intent to swing, to hit.
Yeah.
And it all has to be there. And if you guys are joking around, someone's not paying attention, and all of a sudden someone gets sliced or stabbed.
And that's the thing, is like, that's the last thing you want. And yeah, it's like you have to be serious and you have to be focused and safe. I mean, it's a big thing. So I definitely get that. I respect that.
I mean, you all saw the difference when after we got done with that shoot, we went out to that bar on the lake.
Yeah, of course.
It was a complete 180.
Yeah, I mean, that's something else I definitely think is good to touch on, because yeah, like we went out to Lucky's. We're having nachos. You're playing pool with Zach. We're all laughing, joking, having some beers. It's great. I mean, it was a fun, group outing to just kind of enjoy the fact that it was a great day of filming, and then just like wrap it all up in like a fun way. And that was a good time.
Yeah,
it's great.
And like to go back to the process, it's like thinking how this character feels.
Yeah,
especially because it's like an hour and a half to get here, and there was another film I was on where it was like 3 hours, so I had that time to like figure out to get into the mindset of, okay, I'm being a cokehead biker who is in love with a call girl.
In the other film.
Right. Not this one. Right. It could be this one, who knows? I mean, Torres found like coca flakes, like chewing it up, and oh yeah, let's bite. No,
that's a special right there. Season ender.
Speaking of special, I wanted to do a Halloween thing, but I'm like, he's a bad guy. He ain't hanging around with these people.
Well, the thing is, you could have been there. I mean, because it wouldn't be out of the question that Torres could, because it's not canon to the show.
No.
It's more or less like the Star Wars Christmas special of 1978 or whatever, or it's a spin-off. It's based on the series, but it's not actually anything that ever happened.
Yeah.
The one caveat with that, the only thing that is canon is not the story that happens in the Halloween special, but Dazar Ibrahim's wife, Frema Ibrahim. Well, she actually exists. And like, that's actually like, he really does have a wife, and you do meet her in that special. But we have yet to meet her in the canon version of the show. So if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And plus it's the mindset that I have protecting the character.
For sure. Yeah. Yep.
It would be like if I was on a film and I start off as a murderous scumbag, and then all of a sudden I'm like, let's give out candy to the children.
Yeah.
Let's do charity work. It's like, to hear this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So it's that process of protecting the character.
Yeah.
Staying in character. I'm not like saying a method where you have to call me Torres on set.
Well, right.
But it's just like I'm in the mode and I need to stay here. Yeah, if that makes any sense.
Well, I do get that. And the one thing I would say on that actually too is that in order to get from point A to point B, there has to be character growth and development in a scene so that it actually like makes sense. A perfect example would be Tanner Grimwald, portrayed by Devon. He was a villain in season 1, and now he's like the second lead hero in season 2. And the whole reason that works is that we laid the groundwork at the end of season 1, where after the fight happens and William spares his life, they have a conversation where they're peacefully talking, making amends, kind of realizing that they can have that common ground. And then in season 2, where we meet Tanner again, he's speaking with the king, and he's taking a more nuanced approach where he's saying, you know, the men will be glad to return home as we're ending the war. So that then when he shows up again and speaks with William and his friends, at that point, there's enough legwork that Tanner can be seen as a good guy, where it's not him being a threat coming in the door. Now, Torres, I mean, there's a lot of ideas in the works, and I know we still have to firmly finalize what exactly is going to happen. But I'll be honest that I do see a real potential where there could be something similar, where there could be a situation of enemies to allies yet again. That could be a thing. Of course, William would be apprehensive about that after getting stabbed.
I don't know. You pay me enough. I'll switch sides.
Yeah, it might be. What was that?
I have no loyalty. I only care about who last paid me and how much they paid me. That's all I care about is Torres.
Well, and that's the thing. And now for William as a character, he would have a hard time understanding that because he's a very loyal guy. He does not fight for money. But that could lead to some really good storytelling where you have two men that have different worldviews and different approaches to life, and that natural clash of personalities is kind of like a buddy comedy in a way. That absolutely is in the realm of possibilities, and yeah, I mean that's there's a lot of exciting things in the horizon.
Speaking of which, the buddy comedy thing. I remember when I first heard about this, I didn't want, but you were looking for Fadi. Right, because I know we had connected initially. And I'm looking at it like, that would have looked vastly different because of the size difference between you and I. It would have looked like, it would have been like, you're Spike and I'm Spike and you're little whatever. It's like, I'm going to be out with my buddy Spike and we're going to go out and conquer this and that. Right. It's like it would have turned into a comedy. Right. It's just like the weird buddy. So I'm glad that it all worked out for David to be in that part because, again, he's amazing and it works out better that way. Yeah. And it I wouldn't say typecast, but a giant villain for me to fill that role. Now,
it was pretty seamless. It
worked out better, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate where you're coming from on that because that's always something when it comes to casting decisions and anything with like getting people on board. That is the area where I struggle the most. I'm going to be honest with you. Is like there's so many people that I want to work with. There's so many great people, but there's always limited roles. So what usually ends up happening is if I have to make a decision where it's like, really, this person probably just going to fit what we need right now, but I still want to work with this other person. So I create extra roles a lot of the time so that we can bring people in, and it actually makes the story better.
Yeah, that is such a sign of, I wouldn't say respect, but like your merits as an actor, because I've had that happen.
Thank you.
where directors have been like, I want you to be a part of this. I'm going to write something for you. Yeah. And it's like, wow, am I really that good? Well, thank you. I'm glad. I would love to be a part of your project.
Yeah. I mean, I knew we wanted you. Yeah. Like, where do we fit him in? It's like, holy shit, we gotta figure it out. And I was glad we did because it.
Right. Yeah. And also back to like the idea of David being cast instead of myself. David was the one who told me, like, we were on set for something, and he told me that's what happened, and I'm like, oh well, it's fine. Like, and he's like, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, dude. Like, you're not gonna, as an actor, you're not gonna get every role. Yeah. And if I go out for something and I don't get it, I don't really get too disheartened because
I appreciate that.
5 minutes later, there's another 7 things I can go off of.
True.
And it's the idea of obviously developing the thick skin. I've actually had a talk with my sister about this because she wanted to get into modeling. Okay. Yeah. And I'm like, well, if you do, you have to develop your thick skin. You have to understand that you're not going to get every part. Right. And it's just a continuous chugging along and along and along.
Yes. So. No, I appreciate that. I mean, I really do. I appreciate that, and I'm glad that we could figure it out. And I think it all worked out as it was meant to. And It's the beautiful thing about doing this is that uh, there are so many unexpected but perfect uh, just directions that things go that you almost can't even plan out. You kind of just have to go with the flow.
Exactly.
I love that.
Exactly.
I know we are, definitely crunching up on that hour here. So I think this might be a good point for us to wrap up.
No, you don't want to keep going?
I mean, God, I could talk for hours, but I mean, you're a very interesting guy. I appreciate you being here. Um, I would dare say that there will be more podcasts in the future, especially if we're going to bring tours back. So that is the silver lining. But no, I appreciate it. I mean, it's been a fun chat, and I certainly hope that the listeners have enjoyed it too. I think they will, because this is good stuff. Any closing thoughts that you have on the experience, or kind of like what's next for you? Anything about the engagement that you want to circle back to?
Well, right now, as far as acting, I'm taking a little bit of a hiatus, just because we hit a vehicle situation and all like extra funds have to go to that.
Sure. Yep. Yep.
But any future obligations I have, I know that I have to go back to another set relatively sooner, maybe not till next spring, to do some more fight choreography for
Okay.
another film. And then I think, like, if we have anything in the future coming up, and some other projects that I have to do following episodes for, that's going to keep going. But as far as anything new, no.
Sure.
I think I even told a significant other, like, the last play I did that closed at the end of October, that's my last play for a little bit.
Sure.
Because of the constant time constraints and the sacrifice you have to make to do it. I mean, those rehearsals were going till about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
And I have to get up at 5 o'clock to go to work the next day, so.
It's a lot.
And it's a 45-minute drive, so it's like,
Yeah.
oh, thank God.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you enjoy it.
Oh, God, yeah. It's
But-
just part of the sacrifice.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I'm with someone who understands that that's part of the life,
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
I have to be gone for extended periods of time, or I'm
Mhm.
not going to be here
Yeah.
as long as I want to.
Yeah.
At home as long as I want to on certain days, but this is just all part of chasing a dream, and
Yeah.
it may not go anywhere. It might not go anywhere, but that's not the point.
I mean, you have to have the confidence in yourself, though.
And it's also like the point is I'm doing what I love, and
Yeah.
I want to keep doing it,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna keep doing it until I can't anymore.
Right. I mean, and of course, this is a speed bump along the way, but a hiatus is not the end. So that's.
Oh gosh, no! I mean,
yeah.
there's people who have left for years and have come back
Oh yeah. 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 Yeah.
because there's no real time frame on
Right.
a life as an actor. I mean, if maybe for like a lead man or something, but if you have skills that can continuously be used,
Yeah.
you're always going to be well, I wouldn't say in demand, but you'll always be able to find a project to work on,
Oh, for sure.
if that makes any sense.
I mean, Tom Cruise is still making movies, and
Ugh.
he, even so, what's like Tom Hanks is still making movies, or even Michael Caine was making movies forever. Ian McKellen is still coming back as Gandalf, I think. So-
Well, I mean, I'm not trying to say that I'm anywhere near that skill. Well, those guys are amazing. They're 10 times better than I am.
I mean,
I guess what I'm trying to say is you can always come back.
yeah. I'm with you on that. Like, there's always, even like the length of time that people stay in. Don't always have to retire, Do it until you literally drop into the dirt.
Mhm.
But
Uh,
it's all good.
Other than that, I mean, maybe during this time I'll try to figure out the outlines to the 2 or 3 scripts I want to try my hand at.
Okay.
Then we'll go from there.
Cool. Well, I wish you the best of luck, and I mean, of course, any way I can be helpful, always a resource. So feel free to reach out, and yeah, I guess with that, I really really appreciate you coming on, joining for the podcast.
Oh, well,
and,
thanks again for having me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, and thank you as well to the listeners for tuning in. We really appreciate you being here. We appreciate you joining us for a fun conversation, and we really really hope you've enjoyed season 2 and the discussions about it. So yeah, do stay tuned because there's lots more in the future, podcast episodes. So don't go anywhere. Don't worry. We got lots coming to you. So all right. Well, with that, we appreciate it. Thanks for being here. It sounds like it's time for my cat to have his lunch.
Yeah.
And
Looking at me like, get this guy out of here. It's time to feed me.
oh, he's ready. All right. All right. Well, thank you, and we will cue the music. And until next time.